Hi, my name is Heather, and today I'm going to show you how to create this cute and colorful llama painting. To create this painting, first we're going to need a canvas. Mine is 11 by 14 inches. We'll also need some paints. So I have a black and a white. My black is Blickrylic, and my white is Liquitex Basics. You can get pretty much any brand for the black or the white, but you just want to make sure you get something kind of high quality. Like, you don't want to craft paint with white. You want something kind of good quality like Liquitex Basics because it'll be thicker. And then for all of the other colors, I have the Apple Barrel paints, and you're welcome to use any other brand, of course. I have a brown, which will be for the llama, and this one is Nutmeg Brown. For the background, I have a pink, orange, and a purple. The ones I have are bright magenta, pumpkin orange, and royal violet. And then I just have a couple accent colors. So I have this bright green and this aquamarine. So this one is aquamarine and lily pad green. You'll also need a piece of chalk to sketch out the llama, and also some brushes. So I have a big flat brush, which is a 1-inch flat, and this small flat I believe is 3/4 of an inch. I have probably a number 5 round brush, and then I have a little tiny round brush, which is a size 0 for doing our little details. And then you'll just need a paper towel and some water. Now that we have all our supplies, let's get started. First, we're going to start the background. We will need our background colors, which are purple, pink, and orange. So I'm going to put some of those on my plate, about a 1/4 amount. And then I'm going to grab my big flat brush. I'm not going to get it wet. I'm just going to do this dry. And I'll get some of my purple, and then I'm just going to do long strokes from left to right. And if you get anything weird in your canvas, just go at it with your brush, and then it'll come off on your brush, and then you can get it off. And the key is you want to do long strokes all the way from one side to the other. So you want to start on the outside of your canvas, pull your brush across, and then let it run off the canvas. So when you're applying the paint, go ahead and apply it in the middle if you need to, but then see how you have this brush mark right here? You want to start from the outside of the canvas, go all the way across to smooth it over. And I'm going to do about 1/3 of the canvas. And this is a little bit thin, but we'll go ahead and go back over it with a second coat after it dries. So the main thing to worry about right now is you want it to be nice and smooth. Go all the way across, all the way from one side to the other. And then once you get to where you're going to stop your purple, which by the way, you can go a little bit farther than you intend to go because the pink and the purple are going to kind of blend here, so don't feel like you went too far with the purple. And then I'm just going to go lightly and kind of like feather over that edge so we don't have a hard edge here. All right, now I'm going to just grab the pink. I'm not going to rinse my brush. If you do have extra paint in your brush, which I don't because I kind of like got it all off onto my canvas. But if for some reason you have extra paint on your brush, you can just wipe it off on your paper towel dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my pink. And then I'm going to go right underneath the purple. And then when a lot of the brushes or a lot of the paint has come off my brush, then I can kind of move up and just brush over the purple, and that way they'll blend together. But I don't want to go straight on the purple with a lot of paint because then it's just going to overpower it. So that's why I wait till I have a little bit left on my brush. And notice I'm doing long strokes all the way from one side to the other. Just working my way down. We want to stop when we have about a third of the canvas left down here. And then I'm just going to wipe any extra paint off on my paper towel. I'm not rinsing my brush. And then I'm going to grab some orange. And with the orange, I'm going to start right under the pink, just like we did with the pink and the purple. As my brush starts to run out of paint, I'm going to go up higher and higher to blend it in with the pink. Once you have that blending looking pretty good, you can just get some more orange and finish off the bottom of the canvas, doing your long strokes from left to right, all the way from one side to the other. And now while we're waiting for that to dry, we can go ahead and do our edges. So since I already have the orange paint on my brush, I'll start with the orange edge. So this edge I'm just going to do all orange. And I like to do short little strokes from the back to the front of the canvas. So starting in the back and pull to the front. That way you won't actually get any on the front of the canvas. If you go this way, your brush will overlap onto the canvas and you might mess up the front. Then I'm going to go on the sides. So for this side right here, I'm just going to do just this 1/3 with the orange. And stop when I get to the pink. And then same with the other side. All right, and then now I can wipe my brush off, but I don't need to rinse it because the colors are friendly. Get a little bit of pink, and I'll do the same thing here, back to front. And then just like what we did with the front of the canvas, when you have just a little bit of paint left on your brush, you can overlap the orange a bit, just to kind of blend that part right there. But it doesn't need to be perfect because people aren't really going to be looking at the sides of your canvas. You know, just so that from a distance, at a glance, it looks good. And then I'll go ahead and do the pink side. And then I'm going to just wipe the extra paint off my brush, and I'll get the purple. And I'll do purple. And then the bottom edge, we can do all purple. And once you get the purple on the edge, then you can wipe the extra paint off your brush and then you can go left to right just so that the strokes are consistent with the strokes on the front. But you just don't want to go left to right when you have a bunch of paint on your brush, because then it's going to go onto the front and mess up your front. Our last part of the edge is going to be this little part here. Now that we've done the edges, the purple is actually dry already, and the pink, not the orange. But you can really tell by looking at it like from an angle, and if it looks kind of shiny, then it's still wet. But if it looks pretty matte, then it's dry. So since the purple is dry, I'm going to go over that with another coat. So just nice long strokes left to right. I think I'm going to need some more paint here too. Also, if you're brushing over it and you kind of start to see it get thin, like right here, it's not as thick of paint as over here. And like when I brush over it, it kind of like picks up the paint. That just means that it's too wet right now, so you have to let it dry if you want to go over it again. But definitely don't keep brushing over a part like that, because you're just going to keep picking up the paint more and more, and then you won't have any paint left there. All right, and then I'm just gonna feather this edge like I did before. And then I will wipe the extra paint off my brush onto my paper towel. Get a little bit of pink. And I'm gonna go in the big pink part with the pink. And then when I only have a little bit of paint left on my brush, I will go very lightly over the purple part to blend it a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring this down a little bit more here. And now I'm gonna wipe the extra paint off my brush. And then I'm gonna get some orange. My orange is pretty much dry now, so I'm going to go over the big orange part, and then very lightly brush over the pink, where the pink and orange meet. And there we go. And I'll probably let that dry for a second and then just go back over that one little part there. And I'm just going to blow dry this part really fast. You can just use a regular hair dryer, and it really only takes a couple seconds. So you just kind of watch it as you're blow drying it, and once the shiny part goes away, then it's dry. And I'm just going to go right back over that with some more purple. I'm going to go rinse my brush in the sink, and then we can go start the llama. Once your background is dry, then you can go ahead and start sketching with the chalk. We use chalk because if you mess up, you can just wipe it right off. And when you're done, you can wipe off any extra chalk that you might see. I really don't like to use pencil on the canvas, usually, except in just like certain situations. Like if you're drawing on a blank white canvas, you have to use pencil because the chalk's not going to show up. But if we're going on like a colored background like this, I like to use the chalk because the pencil, you just can't really erase it very well, and you can see it through the paint a lot of the times. So that's why I like to use the chalk. So first, let's go ahead and just divide our canvas into 3 sections. So kind of divide it into thirds. It doesn't need to be perfect, just kind of an estimate. And then first we're going to start by doing an oval for the llama's face. Oh, and I forgot to mention, go very lightly with the chalk, because if you go too hard, it will kind of mix in with the paint, and then you won't be able to get it out. So you want to go very lightly. I'm going to go a little bit darker just so you can see it, but you need to go very lightly. Alright, and then let's also do the body. So we're just going to go in a little bit for the neck, and then I'm just going to come out for the body. So it's kind of like an hourglass shape, or like a peanut. And then we're just going to add the ears. So we're going to go up here, and they kind of curve in. So you can do like 2 parentheses like this, tall parentheses, and then just bring one part over and bring the other part over. And there we have our llama shape, and then we can just wipe off some of these parts we don't need. So that part right there under the head, and then where the head meets the ears. Just kind of wipe those out. Then you can put the chalk down. And then we're going to start by filling in the whole llama section with white. I'm going to grab my small flat brush, and then I'm going to grab some white. And I'm just going to fill this in with my flat brush. And I like to do like the inside part first, and then when I have less paint on my brush, then I can go and do the edges. And you can go right over your chalk line. It'll actually be a lot easier that way, because then you don't have to try to wipe it off later. Also, don't worry if it doesn't cover all the way, because we're going to do a second coat. So you will see that it's like very see-through in a lot of places, and that's okay. The important thing is not to put a very thick coat on. So just put a thin, solid coat on, and then we will be putting another coat on later. So you do want to like smooth it out nice with your brush, and you don't want it to be thick. If you do it very thick, it's going to take a really long time to dry. And it's just not going to look as nice. Also, notice that I'm doing up and down strokes. I'm not going side to side, because this is the way that his fur goes. It's going to go up and down, and so you just want to go in that whole kind of direction with your paint strokes. You can go side to side like I did up here with the head, but then you want to pull it down. Also, when you get to this skinny part in the ears up here, you're going to want to turn your brush sideways like this so that you can just get that little skinny part there. And then you can also just kind of take a step back from your painting and just see if you think it looks symmetrical, if there's any places you want to touch up. So like this part kind of goes out a little more from this part. So also this ear is up a little higher. So I'm just going to add a little bit more to this ear. And then I'll just kind of bring this part out a little bit here. But you don't want to go too crazy perfecting it because nothing's perfect. But you know, just when you get it to where it looks pretty decent to you, then you can be done. Alright, so there's that first coat. We can wait for that to dry to do our second coat. Now that this is dry, we can go ahead and do the second coat of white. So I'm just going to get some white and go right over what I already did. And I can also add some of the little fur parts on the side, which is going to make him look furry. So it kind of adds to the silhouette a little bit. So I'm going to go with my brush, I'm going to go sideways like this. And then you can just kind of pull it out a bit like that. And you want to make sure your brush is pretty flat when you do this, so you don't want it to be all like bunched up and thick, because you're not going to be able to make nice thin strokes like this. And if you do have trouble with making these little fur marks here, then you can also try switching to your medium round brush. Just get it wet and dry it gently on your paper towel so the bristles come together, and then you can get a little bit of white on it. And the key is to be pulling it, so which is kind of hard to do at this angle. So I'm going to turn my canvas and then I'm going to pull it like this. And this is what will make it kind of feather at the end. Also, to make it look a little more natural, I like to kind of stagger where the pieces of fur are, so you don't want them all to be like exactly the same distance apart. So see how like I have some that are close to each other right here, and then some that are farther away, and like I have two next to each other right here. And then when you do this, you just need to make sure you look at your brush and make sure the bristles come to a point and you don't have paint gooped up on the brush. So you can like get your paint like this, and then you can kind of twirl your brush on the plate so that your bristles come to a point. And then when you do this side, you can kind of position the canvas like this, so that way you can pull the line out. So it's whichever way works best for you, whether you like using the flat brush or the round brush. can also add some little pieces of fur on the top of his head too. Just a couple little pieces like that. Then I'm going to rinse and dry that brush. And then we can finish filling in. When you're done with that, you can rinse your brush and dry it. And then while we're waiting for that to dry, we can add our stars in. So I'm going to grab my big round brush and I'm just going to dip it straight into the white paint. The key for making stars is that you want to do them in groups so they look like constellations. And you want to make some of the dots bigger than others. And you can do some that are like kind of in a little line. You can do some that are all by themselves. I actually messed up right here. I made it way too big. So I'm just going to rinse my brush all the way off and dry it a little bit, and then I can pick up some of that paint. You want to make sure you get the paint nice and wet like this. And then rinse your brush off again to get it clean, and then pick some up. And you always want to dab your brush a little bit to dry it a bit. And I actually have a video on this too, how to fix mistakes. Once you get it like watered down enough, then you can just use your paper towel to kind of blot it. Now we have our stars done, and the ears are pretty much dry on mine, but the rest of it's still pretty wet. So I'm going to do the filling in of the ears right now. If yours isn't dry yet, then you can also just blow dry it or just pause the video until yours is dry. I'm gonna flip him upside down. And then I'm gonna get some brown. And I'm going to grab some of this, bring it over the white, and mix it together. So I want to have a nice light brown for inside the ears. Oh, and I'm using my number 5 medium round brush. And I'm just gonna go, first I'm gonna go right along the inside middle here. And then I can just bring it out on the sides. And then it may be a little hard to do this tip right here with the way that, you know, everything's angled. So you can also just flip this around like this. And then it'll be a lot easier to get that little round part, because you kind of want to get it with the tip of your brush. And then I'll go ahead and flip it this way. And we can do the other ear. So I'm going to start by just going right up the middle. And then I can just add to each side. And then I'm going to flip it so I can do the tip of the ear. We're done with the ears now, and the rest of the llama is pretty dry. I'm going to rinse and dry this brush. And now we can add some of the brown into the llama to make his fur look a little more dimensional. So I'm going to grab my flat brush here, and I'm going to get some of my brown, mix it with the white. I want to make sure that my brush is very nice and flat, so I'm going to kind of flatten it onto the plate. So see how my bristles are nice and flat? I just want to do some strokes that are going to go in the direction of the fur. And while these are still wet, I'm going to also do some white, because we don't want these to be so stark. So I'm going to do some of the fur like this. Try to go quickly, and then before it dries I'm going to wipe my brush off and get some white, and then I'll just go right like in between those, overlap some of them. It's not really exact, there's not an exact science to it. You're just kind of messing around, and it's acrylic paint, so of course if you mess up you can always, you know, wait till it dries and then just paint right over it. But this is basically how I like to do it, just kind of like switch between the light brown and the white until you get it how you like it. Alright, so then I'll get some more of the light brown, And then I actually like to flip it to do this side. So I'm just very lightly kind of dry brushing these strokes on. So I'm not doing thick paint, I'm doing very, very light paint. And then I'm gonna wipe this off, get some white, and just go right over it. I'll maybe just go over like up here a little more because it's a little bit, look, it's looking a little bit thin up there. Some of these other thin parts. I'm going to rinse my brush, dry it gently on my paper towel. One other thing is I would just like to go over the part around the ears again. Mine is a little thin. Yours, you can go over it if you feel like you need to, or if you like the way yours looks, then you don't need to go over it. So I'm going to use my medium round brush, and then I'm just going to go right over these edges. Now the ears are done, and I'm going to add the snout in right here. My face is pretty dry right here, so I'm just going to get more of the light brown, and I'm using my medium round brush. I'm just going to do an oval, like right in the middle here. So I'm going to start about halfway up the face. So this is the face, and this is the halfway mark. And that's going to be the top of the oval. And then I'm just kind of pulling it down to near the bottom of the face. And then I'm going to fill it in. Clean up these edges a little bit. And then just to look a little bit more like a snout, I'm going to make it a little bit wider towards the top, and then it gets a little bit smaller down here. So we're going to keep this bottom part the same size, and then just make this a little bit wider towards the top, kind of like an egg. Now that we have that done, we can rinse our brush and dry it. And again, don't worry if it looks brush strokey, we can always do a second coat. And now we're going to start our little decorative part down here. We're going to have some gray that we're going to do some little strings with. So I'm going to get some of my black. And I'll get some fresh white too. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of black and mix it with the white to make a gray. Actually, I'm going to switch to the tiny brush, but first I'm just going to add a little bit of water in here because at least my white paint is pretty thick. So it'll be hard to make a thin line with it. But if you have thinner white paint, or if you actually have like a gray paint that's kind of thin, then you won't need to do this part, adding a little bit of water. So then I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to grab my tiny brush, get it wet, and dry it. And then I'm going to get some of this gray. And then you just want to make sure your bristles are together, that they're not like poofed out or anything. And actually I might need this to be a little bit darker. Add a little bit of water to it. And you can just kind of lay your brush down on your plate and just kind of pull it like that so that your bristles are together. You can also twist the brush onto the plate. And we're just going to do 2 lines. One is going to go like, you could do like the top left to the bottom right, and then top right to bottom left like that. Or you can do it differently if you want to. And I'm going to start from the inside because we'll do the little wraparound part after. I'm just going to go right along like this, and if it starts to get these little white parts coming through, just get your brush wet and then dry it a little bit. And then you can also get it a little wet and get a little more paint on it. So that usually means that it's too dry when you have those little parts coming through. And then another thing is that when you do get those little white dots coming through, it also could be that you're holding the brush too flat or pushing too hard with your bristles. So in order to not get those white spots, you want to have your brush straight up and down like this. So it's really hard for me to do a stroke like that, so I'm actually going to turn my canvas. And I'm going to get some more paint, and then I'm just going to start a little bit further down from here, and then I'm going to go to that bottom corner. And I'm just going to finish it off, even if the white is coming through, just so I get something down. And then now I can get my brush wet, get some more paint, and then just go back over that. But at least I know where my line is going to be. So we do need a little more water in the paint. And then I'm just going to make it look like it's wrapping around him. So I'm going to bring this part up and just kind of curve it in a bit like that. Then I'll curve this part in. And then I'll do the same thing over here. So I'm just going to bring this over and curve it, and curve that one. Then I'm going to rinse this brush and dry it on my paper towel. Let's do a second coat on the insides of the ears. At least for mine, they do look a little bit brush strokey and kind of see-through. So I'm going to grab my medium round brush, flip this guy upside down, and I'll mix a little more brown and white together. And then I'm just going to go over this again. And then I do want to do a second coat on the snout here, but mine's still a little bit wet, so I'm just going to let that dry. I'm going to rinse this brush and dry it, and then we can start doing our little balls here. If you want to switch to your tiny brush for that, you can, but I'm still going to use this medium round brush. And I will start with the purple because I already have that one out. So I'll get a little bit of purple, and I'm just going to do a little ball. And I want it to be touching at the top. So I just did this little circle, just only with the very tip of my brush. And then now I'll fill it in. And then remember, we'll come back and do a second coat after, so don't worry if it looks too thin. And I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to grab my Aquamarine. I'll add one of those. Some green. And then I'll do some of my yellow. And sometimes yellow is really bright, so a lot of times I like to add a little bit of orange to it, just to kind of dull it a little bit. But you still want it to look like yellow, just not quite so bright. And we can start over again with the purple. And I do like to make it a little bit staggered, so like I don't want to put another purple right under the purple. So it'd probably be best to do like green under there. And then I'll just keep going in the same pattern, so green and then yellow. Now that that is done, this is dry as well, so we can do our second coat on the snout. I'm going to use my flat brush, and I'm going to mix some brown with some white. And I'll go ahead and do this second coat. And then I'm going to rinse it. Now I can do the eyelashes. If you want to use your tiny brush for that, you can. I think I'm just going to use my medium round brush, but I'll just go very lightly so that I can get a nice thin line. And for this, you actually can use a pencil for this one very lightly, because it can be a little nerve-wracking doing the eyelashes. You want to start just a little bit up from the snout, and then you're going to go a little curve here, and then you can go all the way out to the edge. And I'm going darker with the pencil so you can see it, but you need to go very lightly with it. And just in case this is hard to see, I'll try to bring it up. And then you want to just kind of try to see like how far in this one is. So it's about the width of my finger in from the snout. So I'll just put this finger here, and then that's about where I should do the other one. But also, it doesn't need to be perfect. Actually, if you look at my original painting, it's not symmetrical at all. And I mean, it's still a pretty cute llama. Actually, our faces aren't even symmetrical, but our brains will look at a face and just kind of make it symmetrical. So that shows that not everything needs to be symmetrical in life. So when you have that sketched out, then you can grab whichever brush you want to use, whether it's the tiny one or the thicker one. And I just stick my brush straight into the black like this, so it kind of coats it. And you do want to make sure your bristles are together and they come to a point. I'm just going to go right over this line. And you can also check out my video on how to paint thin lines. That gives you a lot of tips and tricks. But I'm basically using just the very tip of my brush, and I'm kind of pulling my bristles, so you don't want to go this way like a pencil because you'll have that whole thickness right there. Instead, you want to pull the tip of the brush. And you don't want it to be super thin, like as thin as like a piece of thread, because then you're not even going to see it from far away. So, I mean, you do want to have a little bit of thickness to it, because if you look at the painting, you want to be able to see that there's eyes there. Then we're going to make the eyelashes come out from the face. So I'm just going to extend this a little bit, and you do want it to get a little bit thinner as it goes out. So I'm just going to like pull it up a little bit like that. So it almost ends up making kind of like an S shape, but like a very gentle S. And then we're just going to do 2 more lashes on each one. So I'm going to go in from this one. I'm going to do that one and this one. And then I'll do 2 here. And there's our eyelashes. So now we can rinse this brush and dry it. And let's do a second coat on our little balls here. And then you'll see it'll cover a lot better on the second coat. And now that we're done with those, we can go ahead and do the mouth shape. I'll use my tiny brush for that. So I'm just going to get it wet and dry it on the paper towel. And for that, I'm just going to use the straight brown. I'm going to start by making a V that's not going to be all the way at the top. I'm going to go down a little bit, and it's like a wide V. I'm going to make a line going down, so I'm going to turn my canvas for that. And it's not going to go all the way down, you're going to stop a little bit before the bottom. And then you can just add the little smile. The last step is that we just want to take off this extra chalk here. So the way that I like to do that is you can just take a brush that's a little bit wet. So this one's a little wet because I rinsed it earlier. And then you can just take off the chalk. You do have to be very careful because you don't want to kind of wet the paint under it. I usually wait a day before I do this just so the paint is completely dried and cured. So I'm just very gently taking it off with my wet brush. And there we go, we have our cute little llama painting. So thanks for painting with me. I hope you had a fun time, and I'll see you next time. Bye!